Well, there's been a lot of speculation over the last week or so with reports coming out around God of War Ragnarok being pushed into 2023. There have also been some countering reports as well, and one in particular popped up today, this from Bloomberg, giving us an idea as to even when we could expect God of War Ragnarok to come out. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton, and if you're new to the Spawn Wave Plus channel, make sure you subscribe down below. This was posted up over on Bloomberg, Sony PlayStation's new God of War video game plan for November. I'll link this article down below, but it is from Jason Schreier. And during this week, there was a report that came out of Game Reactor, I believe, and it had mentioned that several sources in Europe specifically, it seemed maybe from marketing or retailers, had said that God of War Ragnarok was being pushed into 2023 and that Sony would be announcing that delay sometime soon. But Jason Schreier had mentioned a couple of times that from what he had heard, as recent, I guess as like that week, no, God of War was still on for 2022. It says here the highly anticipated PlayStation game God of War Ragnarok is planned for release this November. According to 3 people familiar with the game's development, despite reports this week it had slipped to 2023. Publisher Sony Group is expected to announce the release date later this month, 2 of the people said. And that makes sense because if they're going to release this thing in November, I mean, later this month, they'll put them about a 5-month window from them announcing that release date in November to it launching. And they'd want to make sure they have marketing in stores and, of course, all the logistics around distributing the game worldwide. There's a lot of stuff that goes in, a lot of planning and execution. But I will admit, Sony is cutting it close here. It's pretty obvious that God of War, as we all figure, is a large game, right? I mean, it's following up a very impressive release with God of War 2018. Again, my favorite game from that PlayStation generation. So they want to make sure it's polished and it comes out the other end in good condition so it can be reviewed highly, as that's the way that Sony wants their PlayStation Studios brand to be viewed, as being high-quality, top-notch, narrative-driven experiences. And I fully expect God of War Ragnarok to be up there with the best of the games coming out of PlayStation Studios. I will admit, though, it coming out in November, I think is later than a lot of people were expecting, mostly because Sony will release their titles like September, October, maybe at the latest. I was thinking of games that had come out like later than, say, September, like Spider-Man on the PS4 that came out in September. All right, that makes sense. Other titles like Last of Us Part 2 that came out over the summer in June, and even others would release earlier in the year like Horizon Zero Dawn, or this year, Horizon Forbidden West. So it does tell me that Sony is scrambling to get this game out for the holiday season, as it also appears they're ramping up PlayStation 5 production, so it would make sense to have that big blockbuster title on store shelves for the holidays to go along with replenished PlayStation 5 stock. Not that they're having a hard time selling PS5 systems. In fact, Horizon Forbidden West has basically been hanging out at the top of the sales charts in the UK, as we are seeing more and more PlayStation 5s show up in stores. Although we do also have a bundle to go alongside of it. I'm sure that's helping, but nonetheless, people are looking for PS5 systems. Now, if Sony does end up getting God of War Ragnarok out the door in 2022, even as late as November, I think we look back at this year as being a pretty successful one for Sony when it comes to releasing games, especially when we look around and realize how hard it has been, especially this year, for developers and publishers to get games out to store shelves. I mean, so many of them have been delayed out of this year, whether it's from Nintendo or Microsoft. Microsoft is struggling just to get a game out this year, and they do have their showcase on Sunday, so it's very possible that they announce some stuff, as I expect Forza at least to be there. But you kind of look at Sony's lineup for this year, which some of these games were delayed from last year into this year, but either way, you look at this year as it is. And like Horizon Forbidden West, Gran Turismo, so MLB The Show, I know that released on a bunch of platforms, but it's still a game that Sony did put together. And then you see things like God of War Ragnarok and Last of Us Part 1. Sure, a remake, but nonetheless a remake from the ground up. I guess you could also count the Uncharted Legacy of Thieves collection, and that also looks like it's poised to be released on PC anytime now, as the ratings boards have started to rate that for PC. So technically, that's a release, even though it's like a patch that they basically put on the PS5 version, but a release to a new platform there on the PC side of things. Basically, I'm saying, yeah, in a year where it's been tough for games in general to get out there, Sony's done a pretty good job. Also, I wonder if Sony just wants to get God of War out the door so they can have their internal studios move on from the PS4. I mean, think about it that way. If God of War ends up falling into 2023, that means you'd have Sony Santa Monica still working on a PS4 game years into the PlayStation 5's life. And I kind of look at that and say, I'm sure Sony would like to get Sony Santa Monica, their top talent really alongside of like Naughty Dog, on to the next project so they can have that built up for when I would say the PS5 is in like its prime position where there are like tens of millions. I mean, when we'd expect to see the next game from Sony Santa Monica just completely dedicated to the PS5, 4-5 years from now, again, towards the end of its life, you'd expect the PS5 potentially be 100 million plus. So I'm still on Team 2022 for God of War Ragnarok. I think there will be a state of play later this month, so like in the last week of June, that will be just solely focused on God of War. It's this massive title for Sony, and they've done these for other smaller games that have come to the PS5, like Ghostwire Tokyo. So yeah, God of War, I think you can have an entire state of play around it and then give us that release date in November. Second or third week, somewhere in there is probably fine. But let me know what you guys think about this one down below. Really, if you think God of War will be making it out this year in 2022. Like I said, Sony's cutting it close either way, having one of their biggest releases so far for the PS5 come out like right towards the end of the year. It doesn't seem like something Sony will typically do, but that's where they are with a game that I guess was supposed to come out last year, but no one really believed that. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.